Ezra Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah daf Chavav 26, 27, Chav Zayin. We're going to start from daf Chavav on the base. I was just thinking about yesterday because we learned yesterday if you have a moiser is like from the Jewish police in the Warsaw Ghetto. So the din is if that guy falls into a pit and there's a ladder for him to get out, we just learned yesterday that you're allowed to pull away the ladder and take away his escape possibilities. But you have to, say excuse, not that you're killing him, but you're just saying, oh, I need this ladder for my children. They're stuck also. And also for a minin, somebody who is a Christian missionary, that you're allowed to do the same. That was the last thing we learned. We're discussing these ideas that about bad people. So Tanur Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Chavava Mebeis Yisrael Molas a goy l'shum ger. A Jew can give a bris milah to a goy to become a ger. That makes sense. La puke l'shum murna deloy. But if he's trying to heal the guy because he has some infection on his male organ, so then a Jew is not allowed to give an not allowed to um, not allowed to heal a guy, because by a guy we say you're not allowed to do anything for free, and you're not allowed to help a guy if he's stuck in a pit. Let's say a guy is stuck in a pit, you don't help him escape, but you don't take away his avenue of escape. You just ignore it. So same idea that a Jew is not allowed to give a bris milah to a guy, even if it's to help the guy, he has an infection. Now this is where it gets interesting. The guy loy mol yimal es Yisrael. A guy is not allowed to give a bris milah for a Jew. Once you see the theme of Rabbi Meir is always very nervous about goyim. So he's saying that guy is not allowed to give a bris milah to a Jew because he's going to kill the Jew. So says Rameir. A guy could give a bris milah to a Jew if there's somebody on top of him, somebody overseeing him. Privately, a guy is not allowed to give a bris milah to a Jew because, again, we're afraid that he's going to kill the Jew. So Rab Meir will say, even if other people are standing on top of and looking over the guy, he's still not allowed to give a bris milah. Why? He's not going to kill the guy because there's somebody watching, but there's another problem. The zimim, the matzalei sakina. Maybe he's going to bend his knife, and he'll make the guy stale. They'll make the baby stale, not being able to have children. Sterilize that child. So again, Rameir is nervous. Never allow a guy to be to breathe a moil. So that's the opinion. A guy can never be a moil for a Jew. So the Gemara challenges that. V'savar Rameir goy eloi. Does Rameir hold that a guy can never be the moil? Reminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. If you have no Jewish doctor, nobody can give a bris milah. You have choice. Either you could go to a goy or you could go to a kusi. A kusi was somebody who was very much attached to an avodah zarah. Okay, he made himself like a Jew. He accepted the Bible, but really he was serving idols. Or if you could go to a goy, so what should you do? So Yomo Aramai Val Yomo Kusi. Use the goy as the moil and don't use the kusi as the moil. Divrei Meir. So here's your contradiction. You said before Rameir says never use a goy as a moil, and here Rameir says if you have a city that has no Jewish moil, use a goyish moil. Rabbi Yehuda says in that brayso Yomo Kusi Val Yomo Aramai. Rabbi Yehuda was the one that says use the kusi but don't use the goy. So it's a stira Rameir. So the Gemara says, Eipach, you have to turn around that second brisa. Rameir was who says, Yumel Kusi Amarai. Rameir was the one you use the Kusi and don't use the guy. So whatever it says Rabbi Yehuda, it really is Rameir saying it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Amai v'loy kusi. Rabbi Yehuda says use a goy and don't use the kusi. So Rabbi Meir is aligned with his previous statement, never use a goy as a moil. So it comes out that Rabbi Yehuda holds you could use a goy as a moil. So the Gemara challenges that. V'savar Rabbi Yehuda Aramai Shapi Dami. Does Rabbi Yehuda hold a goy is good? Well, Tanya, we learned to the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says, how do you know you're not allowed to use a goy as a moil? Shenema, because the pasuk says, "Va'atem asbrisi tishma." God tells Avram, you should keep this covenant, only you and your children. So we darshan, only you and your children can be moils, but not a goy. So Rabbi Yehuda says clearly that a goy can't be a moil. So how can in the second brisa would Rabbi Yehuda say you could use a goy as a moil if there's no Jewish mile? Answers the Gemara, you have to not turn it around. And really, Rabbi Yehuda holds you cannot use a goy. Comes out, Rabbi Meir holds you could use a goy. Now you have a steerer, Rabbi Meir and Meir. One place Rabbi Meir says don't use a goy, and one place Rabbi Meir says do use a goy. So I'll tell you. We go to Amid Aleph. When does Rabbi Meir allow you to use a goy as a moil? Is if the guy is a well-known doctor, so because he has a reputation to upkeep, he's not going to ruin his reputation by causing a mishap in the milah. Also, Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael. He repeated his teacher what Rabbi Yochanan said. If the guy was a well-known, reputable moihel or doctor, then it's mutter to use him because he's not going to want to ruin his reputation. When does Rameir not allow you to use a guy is if he's not a reputable doctor. He's a guy who just, took an online course to be a moil, then don't use him. Now, if that's the case, so that comes out, Rabbi Yehuda was the one that says, don't use the guy, right? Don't use a guy, even if he's a mumcha, because a guy, the Torah limits that as brisi tishmar, a guy you're never allowed to use. But a kusi, Rabbi Yehuda says you could use. Says the Gemara of Asava Rabbi Yehuda kusi shapi dami. Does Rabbi Yehuda hold a kusi is good to be a moyel? Vatanya, we learned to the Brisa, Yisrael more or less a kusi, v'kusi lo yomelas Yisrael, v'bnei more l'shem har griz in the Rameir. A kusi is not allowed to, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a kusi is not allowed to give a bris milah to a Jew because when he's cutting that baby, he's thinking about har grizim, the avodah zarah on har grizim. He's thinking about idols. Diva Rabbi Yehuda. Amal Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Where do we find that you have to think about like to do the mitzvah of milah? In other words, when you bake matzahs, you have to bake it lishma, l'shem matzahs mitzvah. When you put on tzitzis, you have to do it, make the tzitzis l'shem mitzvah tzitzis. But anybody doing the milah, he doesn't have to think about I'm doing it for Hashem. I'm just cutting a piece. So therefore, even if Rabbi Yossi argues, he says a kusi could be given bris milah to Yisrael, because we don't need that you have to have certain kavana when you give a bris milah. But Rabbi Yehuda says a kusi is not allowed to give a bris milah to Yisrael. So how do you square off everything? And Rabbi Yossi says a kusi can give a bris milah to a Jew and let his neshama leave him, because he has, he cursed him. Let him leave him because he's thinking he's giving a bris milah to the avodah zarah. So how do we square everything off? We don't return everything out. Rabbi Yehuda, you turn everything around. Like we turned around in the beginning. Now, therefore, Rabbi Meir says you can't use a goy. Rabbi Yehuda says you could use a goy. There's another place where Rabbi Yehuda says you cannot use a goy. That's somebody else. The Kakashi, Rabbi Yehuda, where this brisa says Rabbi Yehuda says you could use a goy, and there's a brisa that says Rabbi Yehuda says you cannot use a goy. Ahid Rabbi Yehuda Hanasihi. That was not Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda the prince, the one that authored the Mishnayos, edited the Mishnayos. The Tanya we learned to the Brisa, it's Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Ayman. Rabbi Yehuda the president, the Nasi, he was the one that said that a guy is pasul because of a pasuk. How do I know a bris milah by a guy is pasul? Talmud Loimer, the pasuk says, Va'atem es brisi tishmar, that you have to make sure to only a Jew could be, God says to Avram, only you and your family could be males, but not a goy. Now the Gemara goes back. Rabbi Yehuda says a goy could be a male. Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, but he says a kusi is no good because when a kusi cuts, he's thinking of Avodah Zarah. When a goy cuts, he's not thinking anything. So how do you know if you think the wrong thoughts? It's a pasul amila. Amar Rav Chizda, my time with Rabbi Yehuda. Where did Rabbi Yehuda learn that? And says the Gemara, but the pasuk says Lashem Hima. Actually, it says Vasa Pesach Lashem, and then Himo. It says the word Mila. So we darshan, we put it together, even though the pasuk doesn't really put it together. When you do a Mila, you have to think about Hashem. A goy will think about whatever you're thinking about. A kusi is a smart aleck. He's going to think about Avodah Zarah, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda says it's a pasal mila if a kusi gives a bris mila. Frank the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi who makes a kusi's mila kosher. What's his reason? Himel. The Torah darshans himel. There's a pasuk that says you can give a bris mila any which way you make the cut, even if you're thinking the wrong thoughts. It's a good bris mila. The idach. But what does Rabbi Yossi do? Aksiv Lashem Himo. Doesn't it say Hashem Himo that you have to think the right thoughts when you give a bris milah? And it says the Gemara, Hu bepesach. It says V'hasa Pesach Lashem, and according to Rabbi Yossi, only the Pesach has to be brought lishma. The milah doesn't have to have kavana. The idach, and Rabbi Yehuda says that you need to have kavana. Hanami Oksiv Himol Yimol. Doesn't the Torah tell you that Himol Yimol means you could think about anything when you do the bris milah? And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you have to think about Hashem when you do the bris milah. He'll learn that the Torah just repeated itself, like people sometimes repeat themselves, but not to exclude something. Not to include any type of milah is good. So bottom line is, if a kusi gives a bris milah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not valid because a kusi is going to be thinking about Avodah Zarah, and the pasuk says Lashem Himo. You have to think about Hashem when you give a bris milah. Rabbi Yossi says it's valid because it's Himo. Any type of cut, no matter what you're thinking about, we discount it. It's still a kosher milah. Now, Itmar, we have another discussion. Menayim lemila b'goy psula. How do I know a goy that gives a bris milah? He's not a ger, he's a goy. So how do you know if a goy is the moyel, it's possible? Dori ba'pota mishmeid Rav Ama, in the name of Rav, it says va'ata es brishi tishmar. Like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, that you have to make sure, God says to Avram, only the covenant should be with you and your family. So only by you and your family could be moyel, nobody else. Rabbi Yochanan has another source. Himel yimel. We darshan that himel yimel means that only if you have a bris milah yourself, then you can give a bris milah to somebody else. A goy doesn't have a bris milah himself, so he can't bring a bris milah. My benayah, what would be the difference between the two reasonings? A ravi moyel, a gavnuni moyel, ika benayah. If you have an Arab or a gavnun, these type of religions, they're goyim, but they give themselves bris milah. So that will be the difference. Only if you have a bris milah, you can give a bris milah, ika, then they're good. Brisi tishmar, that's only those that are in the Jewish religion can give a bris milah. Leika, they're not allowed to be moyels. That would be the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, if according to the opinion that says himo yimol ika, that means that if you have a bris milah, even if you're a goy, you can give a bris milah. When a goy has a bris milah, he's still considered to be somebody who does not have a bris milah. He's considered to be an orel. How do I know that? Well, now we learned in the Mishnah, if a guy says, I don't want to have any anah from somebody who's an orel, muta bareli Yisrael, he's muta to have anah for a Jew that did not get a bris milah, maybe because his brother died or he was sick, because that's not included in his neder. He's not permitted, even if in goyim, to have benefit from goyim, even if they have a bris milah. Alma, we see that even if a goy gives himself a bris milah, we think a goy that has a bris milah, it's as if he didn't have a bris milah. So how could you say himal yimal means that if even a goy who has a bris milah could give a bris milah? we learned in the Mishnah in the Dorim that a goy who has a bris milah, we consider it as if he does not have a bris milah. El Benayo, the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan would be the following: Yisrael shemesu echav machmas milah. If a person whose brother died because of milah, so it's dangerous to give this person a bris milah. So a Jew who doesn't have a bris milah. So the Torah says only Jews can be moyels. So even if you yourself, if the Jew doesn't have a bris milah because it's dangerous to give him a bris milah, he could be a moyel, ika. But according to the opinion that says that only if you have a bris milah, you can give a bris milah, so a Jew who does not have a bris milah, even if it's because of health reasons, he cannot be a moyel. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Well, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, if a guy says, I don't want to have any hana from any person who has a bris milah, he's not permitted to have any benefit from even a Jew who doesn't have a bris milah. Even though he said, I don't want to have benefit from anybody who has a bris milah, he's still also from an oral of Yisrael. So we see from there, even if a Jew does not have a bris milah, we consider it as command mihila dami, as if he's considered to have a bris milah. And a Jew who does not have a bris milah because his brother, it's dangerous to give him a bris because he's a hemophiliac, but we consider it as if he has a bris milah. So if that's the case, why wouldn't he be able to be a moyel? Ela ika benai, the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is Isha. Can a woman be a moyel? The man the amavatas risi tishmar only leka. Then a Jew, only a Jewish male can be a moyel. The Isha la bas milihi. Isha cannot be somebody who's considered somebody in the bris because she doesn't have a bris milah. But if you're saying that the whole point is that only if you have a bris milah, you can give a bris milah, has nothing to do with the covenant, the Isha command dami. Then we'll compare an Isha as if she has a bris milah and she could be a moyel. So it comes out that it's a machlokes amaroyim whether a woman could be a moyel. So that falls in the face of the Chumash. The Chumash says that when Moshe was traveling back to Mitzrayim after he met the Eibishter at Har Sinai, and he was traveling with Tzipora, and he did not give a bris to his son, and a snake was eating him. So the Torah says that it seems to say that Tzipora, his wife, took a rock and gave a bris milah to their son Eliezer. So how could someone say that Isha is not good to be a moyel? Well, the pasuk says Vatikach Tzipora tsar. The pasuk tells us that Tzipora took a rock and gave a bris milah. Karebei vatakach. She got somebody else to maybe another guy, or maybe they found another Jew that was also on the run that gave the bris milah. Doesn't it say that she cut the bris milah? She caused somebody else. She hired somebody else to do the bris milah. The Amra le'ina shachrina le'avet. She told somebody else to do the bris milah. That's how you read the Chumash. So the Iba is saying, also Iba Aschala, she started the bris milah, also Moshe Agmara, and Moshe finished off the bris milah. So it wasn't that the woman gave the bris milah. So according to this, that's the machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, whether a woman can be a moyel or not. According to Rav, a woman cannot be a moyel. According to Rabbi Yochanan, she's considered to have a bris milah herself, and therefore a woman could be a moyel. New Mishnah. Misrapim mehen ripa momen, avaloi ripa nefashis. A goy can heal your animal, but not heal you, no matter what. Even if you're not in danger, you can't use a goyish doctor because he might kill you. The ein mistapra mehen b'chol mokum. You're not allowed to take a haircut from a guy because he might chop your head off. Divrei Meir. Even if it's on the side of the road. Even if it's in the Reshus Harabim. The Chachamim says no. Reshus Harabim mutar. If it's the middle of the street, you can take a haircut by a guy, but not privately. In Reshus Harabim, people are walking. The guy is not going to kill you, so you can take a haircut. The Gemara says, "My ripa moment." What does it mean? You could go to a goyish doctor to heal you for money, and my ripi nefashis. What does it mean? Healing your body. So I told you the answer, but the Gemara says that you're not allowed to go to you're not allowed to go to a doctor to heal you if you're not going to pay him, but you are allowed to go to a goyish doctor to hire him. Listening misrap member bechinam. So the Torah, the Mishnah should say you're allowed to go to a goyish doctor if you pay the goyish doctor, and you can't go if he's healing you for free. Elu ripi mammon. What does ripi mammon mean? Dava she'en by sakana. That means you're not in danger. You're allowed to go to the goyish doctor. Ripi nefashis means dava she'esh by sakana. That if you are in danger, you're not allowed to go to the doctor, the goyish doctor. Says the Gemara, that cannot be the pshat in the Mishnah either. Rabbi Yehuda says an absolute no. Never go to a goyish doctor no matter what. Even if you have a wound from bloodletting, loy mistasina minei. You're not allowed to go to a goyish doctor. Again, why not? Because he might kill you, and you're not going to realize it. So what does it mean? When are you allowed to go to a goyish doctor, and when not? Ella, the answer is ripa moment. If you're trying to heal your animal, he's a veterinarian, then behemta, your animal, then you're allowed to go to him. Ripa nefashis, but if your own body, you're not allowed to go to a goyish doctor. Gufe, for your own body, you're never allowed to go to a goyish doctor. That's what Rabbi Yehuda meant. Even if you have a wound because you took bloodletting, you're never allowed to go to a goyish doctor. Now, that's not absolute rule. It depends. If he's giving you a prescription, he's not healing you, then you are. If he tells you this medication is good for you, this medication is bad for you, then you're allowed to take his advice. Why? We go to Amid Beis. Savar, the goyish doctor thinks, Shayuli Mashale. He's asking me what my opinion is. Just like he's asking me, he's going to do a Google search. And also, I don't want to look bad if he's going to find out I told him that to take poison. So therefore, he's going to always be more honest, telling you what drugs, medication is good for you. Says the Gemara, a new thing. Rav Yochanan said, Sofik chai, Sofik meis, emes rap behem. If you don't know if you're going to live or not, let's say you have a sickness, you don't know if you're going to live or not, so ein misrapim behem. Then you're not allowed to go to a goyish doctor. Vade meis, if you're for sure going to die within a month, right? Misrapim behem, you're allowed to go to the goyish doctor. You're afraid that he's going to kill you, but there's a possibility he might not kill you. He might extend your life. Says the Gemara, meis ha'ike chayesha. If you're for sure going to die. If you're going to die, why are you allowed to go to the goyish doctor? He might kill you sooner. If you didn't go to the goyish doctor, you would have lived an extra month. Now that you went to the goyish doctor, he might kill you and you might die right away. And says the Gemara, we're not concerned about chayesha. In other words, if you're for sure going to die, the guy he knows you're going to die, so he's not out to kill you. He's probably maybe trying to get money from you to extend your life. And we're not concerned about that your life might get caught short by an hour, because there is a good chance he might give you the right thing to extend your life a little bit. How do I know I'm not concerned if my life is going to get cut short for an hour? The pasuk says, that there were 4 Mitzrayim. They didn't know what to do. Either they were going to die for sure of hunger, the Tanakh says, or they can make their way to the city of Aram, where they might die, they might not die, as being Jews. So they went to Aram. But maybe they're cutting their life short. If they die from hunger, they may have 2 weeks to live. If they go to Aram, they might be killed right away. We see from the Tanakh, the Chayesha loy chashinam. You don't concern yourself about saving yourself for another hour. So now we see from here that you're allowed to go to a goy. If you're terminally ill and you have a month to live, you're allowed to go to a goy, a doctor, to heal you or to try to extend your life. Says the Gemara, is that true? A person shouldn't have a conversation with a Christian missionary. You're not allowed to even go to them for a healing. If you're a terminal ill patient, you're not allowed to go to them to try to extend yourself for a couple of hours, to try to extend your life, to buy time. And Maisa ben Dama, this person called Ben Dama, Ben Achoshesh Rabbi Shmuel, he was the nephew of Rabbi Shmuel, the son of his sister. Shekishay Nachash, he got bitten by a snake, and he's for sure going to die. Yaakov Ish Kvar Sadya. This Christian missionary named Yaakov came Larapoisi. He wanted to heal this Ben Dama. Rabbi Shmuel, the uncle said, don't heal him. So the Ben Dama said, Rabbi Shmuel, Achi, my Shmuel, my uncle, Hanachlai, let him heal me. Vani avi mikra min shumotar. I'll prove it to you from the Torah that I'm allowed to go to this Christian missionary to heal me. And the Christian missionary, the story never ended. That Ben Dama died, his soul left him and he died. So Rabbi Shmuel said, I'm proud of you. Ashrecha Ben Dama, I'm proud of you, Ben Dama. Shegufcha tar, your body is tar, v'yatz nishmascha b'tar, and your body left you, neshama left you in tahara. So you didn't violate what the Chachamim said. You're never supposed to go to a Christian missionary as a doctor, because if you violate that, you break the fence, you're going to get bitten by a snake, because the Chachamim, you violate the words of the Chachamim, you get bitten by a snake. So Rabbi Shmuel was proud of him that he listened to his uncle, and that Ben Dama died without having the Christian missionary heal him. So we see that you're never allowed to go to a Goyish doctor, even to extend your life for an hour or so, even if you're terminally ill. Answers the Gemara, there's a big difference. Shani minas the mashcha the asal mishkan basrei. To a regular Goyish doctor, you're allowed to go, but to a Christian missionary, there it's too attractive, and you might be attracted to him and might join the Christians. So therefore, they ask any interaction with the Christian. One more minute, and then we'll stop. Omar Mar. So that's the bottom line. The bottom line is, if a person's terminally ill, he's allowed to go to a Goyish doctor to perhaps extend his life a little bit, a month or two. But he's not allowed to go to a Christian missionary doctor, because that is attractive, and he might join the Christians right before he dies. Omar Mar, we learned before. His uncle told him, I'm so proud of you that you didn't violate and get healed by this doctor, this Christian doctor, because if you would have, then you would have gotten bitten by a snake. Says the Gemara, he already got bitten by a snake. And says the Gemara, when you get bitten by the snake because you violated what the rabbi said, then you'll never ever be able to heal. Like this, he had a snake bite, but then if he would have gotten healed a little bit by the Christian missionary, he would have gotten another snake bite. He would have died anyway. Now, my Havalei Lamema, what was Ben Dama trying to tell Rabbi Shmuel? Allow me to be healed by this guy. Doesn't the Torah says, you're not supposed to give up your life. You should always try to live. Concludes the Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says, Hani mili b'tzina. Only to do something private, you can violate any isser of the Torah in order to extend your life. Avo b'fahesya, to violate something in public, loy, and to allow the Christian guy, the Christian missionary, to heal you, that's a violation in public. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Hoy Rabbi Shmuel Oimer, concludes the Gemara. Rabbi Shmuel said, if they tell a person, avoid Zarah, ba'al tehereg, serve an idol and don't be killed. So Rabbi Shmuel is of the opinion, sheyavad, do serve the avoid Zarah, ba'al ya'areg, and don't allow yourself to be killed. Talmud Bavli Daf Yomi. The Torah says you're supposed to live, that you're never supposed to give up your life for a violation of the Torah, even if it's to serve Avodah Zarah. But if it's in public, if everybody knows about it, and the guy says, bow in front of Avodah Zarah, and all the Jews are watching you, how do you know that you're supposed to give up your life? The only time you're not supposed to give up your life is if there's no Chilul Hashem. But if there's a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, then you're obligated to give up your life. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.